Mankind has always sought to do the impossible. We wanted to travel faster without cleaning up after horses, so we invented the automobile. We wanted to fly, so we invented the airplane. And finally, we wanted to travel to the stars, so we invented the rocket, which allowed us to travel the moon. And who knows, one day we may even be able to colonize Mars. Mankind also wants to do something such as play a 4X game without taking glacial amounts of times. Because if you ever played a game such as Twilight Imperium, a very well-known 4X game, after 12 hours of playing as a 6-player game, you may think you're experiencing glaciation, or you may just think you're playing in real time because after 12 hours you may realize you're still playing the same game and nobody's managed to win. So that's why players managed to invent something called the 3E game. Now if you're not familiar with a 4X game, it's basically a term invented by people who are pretty bad spellers, and it stands for explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate, which should be pretty much self-explanatory. You're exploring the board, you're exploiting your resources, you're expanding your empire, and eventually you're going to exterminate all of your opponents. Well, what a 3E is, it's a term that was invented call it about 2 minutes ago. And basically what it is a term invented by people who are actually really good spellers. And basically you drop one of the 4 of the X's to create a game that takes out something to make the game play just a little bit quicker. Which is where we get games such as Exodus Proxima Centauri. And don't worry, I got a pillow down there because I'm not crazy enough to damage my board games like other people. Exodus Proxima Centauri is a space empire building game where every single player is going to represent one of the factions trying to take over the galaxy. And an interesting nod, this is actually a futuristic human race because every one of these factions were formerly humans. Well, we're still kind of humans, but if you get the expansion, you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a second. But basically, we've completely exploited the planet Earth, and we were managed to be rescued by a far-reaching alien civilization that gave us a little bit of technology. Did give us a hands up. Unfortunately, though, still being humans, still being jerks. Once they took off, we reverted back to our old ways. And we decided that each one of these factions decided that they want to be the one who's in control of the entire galaxy. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to do that by going out there and exploiting resources, which are represented by these dice, which creates a very interesting mechanic where you're always going to be fighting to have enough resources to do everything you do because resources will be needed to buy your war machine, upgrade your spaceships, go out there and build more spaceships themselves, and also to move your people across the entire galaxy and conquer different regions that are going to be protected by the other players. And they're also going to be protected by these neutral factions. And these neutral factions aren't liking the idea of you wanting to go out there and conquer them. So they do everything they can to be a little bit of a resistance, make your life a little more difficult. And while defeating them might give you some really interesting resources, you got to realize that they're not liking the idea of you trying to take over their peaceful way of life. Exodus Proxima Centauri is going to be played out over rounds, and that's based on the amount of game you want to play. You can play a really long game, which will go out for a total of 9 rounds, or you can play a shorter game that goes for 7 rounds, which is pretty much the average game, or you go for an even shorter game for a 5-round game. But again, I'm kind of getting into stuff in the expansion. I'll cover that all just in a second here. But basically, like I said, the game is played out over rounds. Every round is broken down into 5 phases. The very first phase is the chance for players to go out there and exploit all the resources and all the planets they've managed to move into. And basically, you're going to use these resources to do stuff such as gaining money. You're going to use this to gain resources that allow you to build extra spaceships. And you're going to gain extra resources which can allow you to upgrade your spaceships and manage to go out there and get better weapons, better star drives, and the ability to travel around the board and improve your war machine and get out there and do what you need to do, which is conquer the game. After players go out there and exploit all the resources they can get, the next thing we're going to do is move to the political phase where players can vote for such things as new laws. They can vote for new resolutions, which are going to only happen for 1 turn. And then finally, we're going to vote for executive decisions, which are going to be temporary things, while the laws we're going to vote on are going to be permanent changes that are going to change the way the game is going to be played. The cool thing about this part of the game is that players are actually going to vote on which one things are going to happen, and then we're going to get a chance to vote for what free actions are going to happen during the action phase. But we're getting ahead of ourselves because the really important thing is now we get to vote to see who is going to be in charge of everything. Because one player gets to be the chancellor, somebody gets to be the handy chancellor, and somebody's not going to be able to handle too many things, going to be in charge at all. But that's all going to be part of the political voting system, which is going to cost you money because, you know, the person who has the most money gets to be in charge, gets to make most of the decisions. And it can be very, very important to become the High Chancellor because that's going to give you some extra bonuses, not the least of which is extra victory points if you manage to hold on to it for the entire end of the game. After the council phase, the next thing up is the action phase, where players get to take all the actions they want to take. Well, they take some actions. It must be based on the play of some cards that they're going to play down on the board, and different actions are going to give them different things, such as they can upgrade their ships. They can go ahead and go mining, which allows them to find more resources on planets, which can be great, especially if you have a planet that's been completely exploited for all the current resources it has. You can trade on the market, you can build ships, you can go banking, or you can work on scientific advances. Now, the really cool thing about this game is while you can work on the top half, players can follow other actions that you're doing by following on the bottom actions if they're willing to sacrifice resources. By resources, I mean sacrifice their population to go ahead and copy your actions, or maybe they're going to copy their own actions for a little bit less of a cost, but still going to cost some population to do so. And population is very important in this game. It can help you get victory points. It can also work to take away victory points for other players as we work into the fourth phase of the game, which is a weapons of mass destruction phase where we get to launch rockets against the other players if we happen to control them, and these rockets are very powerful. And they do things such as wipe out population, they can wipe out resources, or they can completely destroy an entire planet and everything that happens to be on that planet. Weapons of mass destruction are very powerful and very easy to take over control from another player because whoever has the most population on a certain planet is the one who gets control of that weapon of mass destruction. After the weapons of mass destruction phase, we finally get to move on to the combat phase where we get a chance to load up some of our players' civilizations onto some of our fleets, where we can transport them to other planets. Hopefully, if we have the right technology, we can easily land them onto other planets if we want. If not, we got to do a little bit of a dice rolling. But we're going to use that to expand our empire across this great galaxy. And eventually, we're going to work towards going and fighting the other players and attacking them, because other players' ships are worth victory points if we manage to blow them out of the water or out of subspace. Now, the basic game of Exos Proxima Centauri is a very deep strategy game. It's got a lot of very cool things. You got your spaceships, you have your tech trees, but it gets even cooler when you pick up the very first expansion of the game, which is called Edge of Extinction, which makes the game very asymmetric, because now not only do we have the basic factions that come with the game, granted we're all descended from humans, now we get to start adding in factions that are very asymmetric, that all play very differently. Matter of fact, they all get their own tech trees, which are unique to every single faction. Nobody gets to share tech with any other faction. It's unique to every specific faction, and you also get your own starting resources, access to your own special abilities, and every one of these factions are going to play differently. From the purple faction, which has the ability to reroll combat dice in the start of every battle, making them pretty darn nasty if you start attacking them very early in the game. You have the yellow faction, which is the masters of science. Their actions are science, 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 and in case you can't figure it out, science, but they're very good at science and making sure they win the game through going out throughout their science. Then you have the red faction, which is basically like the in-law that you can never get rid of because they're going to use their special drives to go anywhere they want on the board just because that's a special technology only they have access to. And then finally you have factions like the green faction here, which is definitely not descended from Edwin Starr. Go ahead and Google it. I know it's before my time too, but it's a classic song. You should probably check it out anyways. But there's a total of 6 different factions in the game. They all play very differently. They're going to make the gameplay very different. And they're also going to give the ability of the Resistance to have extra special combat cards, making sure battles with the Resistance are a little bit more dynamic. So also give players extra combat cards, making sure their own combats are a little more dynamic, adding a lot more variety to the game. That already has a lot of variety, a lot of different ways to play it, from the movement through the fog of war, or if you just move the movement by going whoever has the most powerful engines gets to make the best decisions, gets to move the furthest, and gets to go out there and conquer their empires in any way they want. At the end of the game, the players are going to add up their victory points. They're going to gain victory points by having dominance, by having their spaceships out there in certain sectors of the board, any sector that's not basically destroyed. You're also going to get extra victory points. You have dominance by controlling the center hex at the end of the game. And you also get victory points by having your civilizations out there on various planets. Victory points if you manage to destroy some of these neutral factions. And that may or may not happen depending on what you do with these cards. And you're also going to get victory points based on certain law cards that may come into play from the politics, but that's all going to change and make the game play. Whoever has the most victory points is going to be the grand winner of the game. Now, if you want to learn how to play Exos Proxima Centauri, I'm just going to teach the basic rules, not with the expansion at all. I'm going to do that in a separate video, but if you want to learn how to play Exos Proxima Centauri, check out my tutorial video where I'll explain to you exactly how to play the game, basically as if I'm sitting across the table from you, show you how to play the game, so you basically take the game home, pop it in the box, and learn how to play the game. Pretty much right out of the box know how to play the game. If you want to bypass that, you can check out my full sample gameplay video where I'm going to play a 2-player game, because like other impossibilities, trying to get all 6 factions to fit under one camera lens is next to impossible, at least to do this. This is actually a game that has a lot of real estate, so I'm just going to play the game as a 2-player game, which will allow you to see a lot of gameplay variety, because I'll be able to go over a lot of turns and allow us to have the factions interact at a very early stage of the game, so you can see combat and battles and see some other things like that also. Finally, if you want, you can bypass all that and check out my full review and see my opinion of Exodus Proxima Centauri. Hope you enjoy this video. I hope you enjoy this video series. If you have any comments or questions, as always, leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I'll be sure to answer them as quickly as I can. You can also feel free to email me at offtheshelfboardgamereviews. That's otsbgr@gmail.com. Also, if you like this channel and you want to help support this channel, check out the channel on Patreon, patreon.com/otsbgr. Your support can help bring out more games, more videos, more tutorials, and just more content from the board gaming hobby. Click that like button, click that subscribe button. As always, thanks for watching.